Yoga can be daunting for those with knee problems. Unfortunately, that's a lot of us, myself included. While most of us are sitting in our daily jobs, a static posture, this keeps the muscles around the hip joints short and tight. So one of the main areas to work on is opening of the hips. The hip joints are most often what limits our range of motion in postures that seem to stress the knees. So it's not really our knees themselves. So you'll notice that our leg and the knee is designed to extend and flex quite easily, but it wasn't really designed to rotate. You can see the bottom part of the leg does have some rotational movement. And the problem in yoga is what we tend to do is accentuate this rotational movement, causing damage to the knee joint. The knee joint technically is called the femorotibial joint, and it is a hinge joint which is formed where the femur meets the tibia. This is the vulnerable piece of the chain that connects our foot and ankle to our pelvis. These bones, multiple muscles, ligaments and tendons come together to allow the knee joint to function. Therefore, we need to strengthen all of the muscles, tendons and ligaments around the knee. Let's now talk about the ligaments that work on stabilizing the knee. There are two ligaments known as the ACL and the PCL. Now these tend to get damaged and torn generally with contact sport like soccer or football. But in yoga, we tend to damage the meniscus, which is a shock absorber or cushioning area in the middle. And this can get squashed or torn when we do poses like Lotus, so Padmasana, and the MCL and LCL located on the sides of the knee. So to open the hips, we can try a great pose called Trikonasana, that's bound angle pose. So you can see I'm seated on a mat. And in Trikonasana, we keep our feet together and our knees splayed outwards. And you'll notice that if your knees are quite high up, sort of like that, away from the floor, it's a good indication that your hips need a little bit more love before you start working on the full Lotus position. So to get to Lotus, you need to practice lengthening of your quads. And sitting in Virasana is a good way of doing that. Now the best way to do that and not damage your knees is to perhaps use a block. I'll just demonstrate. So sitting this way and really aiming for parallel thighs. So this block is putting less pressure on your knee joints. Another pose to try is one-legged folded forward bend. It's sort of a half Virasana. I'll take that off and I'll put back the blanket that I was sitting on. And you can see here that having my sit bones raised on a mat also helps to alleviate any of the pressure on the knees. And generally that's how we do that, with your hands raised and folding forward. Another pose to try is Janusirsasana A, head to knee pose. So this is a great posture to prepare your hips for Padmasana. It helps relieve tight hamstrings. So you can sit in this manner and really try and give yourself a bit more space here. That way there's less pressure on the knee. And generally what we do then is inhale and fold forward. Let's now look at some standing postures, as the other issue that damages the knee is hyperextension. When you extend or straighten your knee beyond a straight line, it's called hyperextension, which can injure the knee and other parts of your body. If you force the extension beyond this, you will overstretch these ligaments and possibly tear some of them. So let's try a pose called Parasitha Padottanasana, which is wide-legged forward bend. And I'll stand up to demonstrate this one. So you can see my feet are fairly wide apart. The sides of my feet are parallel to the sides of the mat. So what we tend to do here is really raise these hips and extend and push down through the four corners of your feet. That would be the best way without causing any damage to your knees. Inhale, hands on your hips. Exhale, folding forward. Inhale, exhale to come back up. Another standing pose that we can try this is the warrior pose, warrior 2, Virabhadrasana 2. This is the way to stand in that pose. So just remembering your knee should always be aligned under your ankle and always facing forward. That means it's pointing towards the middle toe. So we never want this knee falling forward or in front. So always in line, and that's your warrior pose. So remember, with warrior we tend to really concentrate on the front knee, but really you want to think about the back one as well, really pushing down into the mat and to the earth with your feet, the four corners of your feet. That will push your kneecap up and really extending through this area. So down this way and up in the back. Another pose I'd like to talk about is Trikonasana, and that's your triangle pose. In this picture you can see that the back toes are turning to face the long edge of your mat. The front foot is facing the short side of your mat. Engage your inner thighs. Use a block under your hand. That will ensure that you don't hurt your knees. And adjust your stance as needed. And do the best you can. Be sure to come out of this pose on the inhale, engaging the abdominals to help you rise without stressing the lumbar spine. Remember that the goal in standing poses is to have your weight evenly balanced on the four corners of each foot, the inner and outer edges of the feet, and the inner and outer edges of the ball of your foot. Not to lean too heavily on the heel. If you press those four corners into the floor, your quads will contract, helping to stabilize the knee, encouraging straight alignment. I also want to quickly mention another issue in the knee, and that's knee bursitis, which is the inflammation of the small fluid-filled sac, the bursa, situated near the knee joint. This could cause swollen knees as a result of kneeling on hard surfaces. So I would recommend not to attempt any kneeling yoga poses like Ustrasana, which is camel pose, which is a strong quad stretch. This picture demonstrates here it being done against a wall, and also make sure that you avoid excessive squatting. To conclude, our joints need to have a balance of flexibility and strength around them in order to function properly. So we have good mobility. We want to have a range of movement that is strong and stable. This prevents injury and is very important for our physical practice. Above all else, listen to your body. The good news is that practicing with care and attention to the principles outlined today will support healthy knees throughout your life. Join me again in Yoga Eden.